We will go ahead and get things started. As a preemptive reminder, this will be recorded. There are actually a lot of resources that I'll be talking about during the course of the webinar today. I want to make sure everybody has access to, so the recording will be sent out along with a list of links to scripts and other documents that might be useful over the course of your patching journey. We will start. Just dive right into it. I promise this will be a brief bit of PowerPoint at the beginning. Vast majority of time today will be spent inside of the NinjaOne platform. But I did want to sort of table set with the importance of patching, in relation to your endpoint management. It's table stakes. It's one of the critical first questions that anybody asks when they're interested in endpoint management is patching. What is the process? What is the procedure? What is the effectiveness of it? We're going to look at kind of the basics of patching within Ninja today. You'll see here kind of a brief agenda. We'll start with the basics of how patching works inside the platform, just to level set for everybody so everyone's familiar. And we'll talk about how we can manage patches through the Ninja dashboard. And then after that, we're going to get a little bit expansive and really try to use the depth and the breadth of the NinjaOne platform to sort of make sure that we have all the angles covered. We'll be talking about the Windows 11 conundrum. How do we handle that? How do we block it? How do we find out whether the device is ready to be upgraded to Windows 11 or not? How can we plan for the future? It's always a huge topic of conversation, is how to handle Windows 11. We'll then talk about the end user. How do we account for the end user? How much do they need to know, or how much do they not need to know about the patching process? And then we need to look into how we are going to be maintaining patch compliance through Ninja. And we'll finally end on what some of the common practices of NinjaOne users are. People always want to know what everybody else is doing. And we'll cover some hard data of how people are arranging their schedules and approvals through Ninja. But before we dive into the actual demo, I did have a quick question that we wanted to put out there, which is just, what's the challenges that you face today with patching? Is it deploying your patches to devices that are all over the place in distributed environments? Is it having a centralized place to manage all the patches and all the data that you need in order to maintain your effective patching cycle? Or is it patching that just works? It's kind of can be a Sisyphusian struggle to roll the rock up the hill every single month in terms of maintaining patch compliance. It's much nicer from my perspective to be able to just say, hey, I want to make sure the rock is getting to the top of the hill, and that's really all I care about. I don't want to have to actually be doing the heavy manual lift month to month of ensuring that patches get installed. I have done that. It is not something I would recommend. And with that, we'll go ahead and I will reshare my screen and we will dive into the full demo. All right, screen should be up right now. And we're going to start by talking about the basics of patching within Ninja. This right here is the main Ninja dashboard, and right away you're seeing good, useful information about patches. From right here, the third line down on the device health tile, we can see any patches that have failed to install, and that's clickable. We can easily remediate if we need to. And we'll also see what patches are pending. And that is patches that require a level of human interaction in order to, or before they get pushed out to machines. Essentially, it's a category of patch where you want a human being to look at it and say, yes, this needs to be approved prior to it actually being installed. Now we're going to zoom out a little bit here to see how this data actually gets put in place into the Ninja system. And no discussion of patching in Ninja is going to be complete without a discussion of the policy. The policy is the engine of Ninja. It's what makes Ninja go. A lot of the common settings that most people care about in terms of day-to-day IT operation are covered within policies. And that would be not just your Windows patching settings, but also what do you want to monitor and alert on? When do you want to patch your third-party applications? When do you want to, or what integrated antivirus would you want to deploy to your devices? A whole slew of other settings. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll see the agent policies here. We're going to focus primarily on Windows patching today, just because it's a numbers game, and that's the bulk of what people are managing today with Ninja. So this is primarily going to be Windows patching focused. And so therefore, we will go ahead and dive into a Windows workstation policy to start with. You'll see on the left-hand side here some of those items that I mentioned. So conditions, this is what would create the alerts and create tickets off of what you want to monitor inside your environment. We also have scheduled automations, integrated antivirus, third-party software patching, but we're going to stick with the main event today, which is going to be Windows patching. Now at the top, we'd want to go ahead and enable it so that we're actually patching our machines that are assigned to this policy. Below that, you'll see the mode, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend staying on the Control Windows Patch Management setting. If I switch, you will see that you lose a lot of the flexibility and control that you generally want to have with Windows patching when we switch to the configure mode, which is essentially saying that updates will be installed as the endpoint decides to install them. So for my money, I'd rather be on the Control Windows Patch Management. That gives us the most control and visibility into what's happening on our devices. Now, below that, you'll see two schedules. We have a scan schedule right here, and we have an update schedule directly below that. The scan schedule is informational. It's finding out what new patches are available for the machine in question, and then it's returning that information to your dashboard so you can make a decision about what you want to approve and what you want to reject. We'll see down here the various levels or categories that we receive from Microsoft, and then the corresponding approval level. There are 3 different levels of approval. You can see for the optional patches right here, we're just rejecting everything. We don't want the optional patches. Anything that's truly important and necessary, it'll eventually make its way to us, probably through the important channel right there. And you can see with the important approvals, we are rubber stamping. Automatic approval. So as those patches are made available, they are just getting rubber stamped. Now you do have an option here, a little bit of a safeguard, which is you want to automatically delay the approval of the patch. So rather than just immediately, maybe you're patching on patch Tuesday or the day after, instead of having it installed right then, you might want to go ahead and delay certain categories of patches. And so we can say, perhaps for critical updates, maybe we want to delay just a little bit, maybe 3 days, but then perhaps for something that's not as important, perhaps for maybe our service packs here, we can go ahead and maybe delay this a little bit longer to ensure that there's some testing first prior to the patches actually getting deployed out to production machines. Now we have security update approvals, your regular approvals, for lack of a better term, and then the advanced approvals down here at the bottom. You'll see that drivers and feature updates are toggleable. So you get to control whether or not you want to even look for those particular patches. You can see we have drivers turned off in this particular environment, but then feature updates are turned on, but they're set to a manual level of approval. And that's the 3rd level of approval: auto reject, auto approve, and then the middle ground option, which we can see now, which is manual, which is meaning that somebody has to actually look at that patch and say, yes, I want to approve that before it's actually going to be installed by Ninja across your devices. Feature updates, of course, would be the big builds of Windows. So going from, say, 20H2 to 22H2, that would be a feature update. And that would apply to both Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices. And of course, the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11, which, as I teased earlier, is something we'll definitely talk about. Now, the second schedule, we have 2 of them. The first one was the scan schedule that identified the new patches and then filtered it through the approval levels below, and then returned it to the dashboard. The update schedule, which I am highlighting now, this is actually what does the heavy lifting of downloading and installing the patches that we want to have installed in our environment. Now, in terms of the scheduling here, you're going to see that both of these schedules, the scan and update schedule, have identical options. It could be once a day, it could be multiple times per week, it could be once a month, or some other custom schedule. This is great for doing something specifically in relation to Patch Tuesday, like I am here. Perhaps I want to go ahead and scan a week after Patch Tuesday. I could also make this a quarterly schedule. So if I only wanted to install patches on a quarterly basis, I can very easily make that sort of accommodation with a custom schedule. And finally, you have a none option. If you don't want to install patches on a regularly scheduled basis, you only want to do it when it's manually initiated through Ninja, you do have that flexibility. Now, this could be standardized to a time zone, but most people use local device time to determine when patches are going to kick off. And you can establish a duration down here at the bottom. This isn't necessary or required, but it is an additional option for when you have extremely tight maintenance windows. We certainly have some people who manage hospitals or other first responders, and downtime is not really in their vocabulary. And so in order to make sure that, during their one maintenance window every month, where they're able to patch and reboot servers between 2 and 6 a.m. on the fourth Sunday of the month, that is something that we can account for and make sure that we don't exceed that particular tight maintenance window. That being said, not a requirement, and most scans take under 2 hours. Now, after the update schedule, or I guess I should back up a little bit here, the update schedule has some additional options tied to it, specifically the pre and post automation execution. So this would allow you to run a script immediately before the patching cycle, as well as immediately after the patching cycle. In the pre-script execution, we do have the option here to perform some sort of check. So perhaps we want to evaluate that a certain service is not operational or a certain process is not currently running because we don't want to interrupt that application and we can't patch if that application is open. That would be a way for you to evaluate and then confirm that your device is in the right state to receive patches. And then, of course, we could also run a script after. This could be just to notify somebody that patching has concluded. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too, notifying the end user that patching is about to take place and that they should leave their machines on. And then, of course, maybe closing the loop there and saying, hey, we're done with patching. You can go about your business for the next week or so. Now, after the installation of the patches, these days, the vast majority of patches require a reboot in order to finalize the installation. Now, Ninja is going to identify devices that require that type of reboot. We'll actually have a little yellow indicator that appears on the device and says, hey, you need a reboot. However, you can help move the train along the tracks, so to speak, by using the reboot options that we see here. Now, I'm on a workstation policy, so let's keep that in mind that I'm definitely going to have different options for workstations versus servers. But on workstations, if a user is logged in, it makes the most sense to go ahead and prompt them to reboot until they accept it. Now, on servers, probably doesn't make a lot of sense because generally people aren't logged into those all the time. So the prompt probably isn't being seen by anybody, assuming there is a user logged into that server. Now, down here at the bottom, we get some customization options. Do we want to go ahead and customize what the reboot dialog says, make it a little bit more personalized? We can absolutely do that. We'll just say this is Windows patching, and please reboot your machine at your convenience. Now, some people might just click no. And so if you want to control how many times they can say no until we say, hey, you're rebooting whether you like it or not, we can go ahead and have them force a reboot after X number of prompts. And that is going to play in very closely with how frequently your interval is for reminding everybody. 5 minutes is a little high. So let's go ahead and bump that up to a couple of hours. Let's say every 6 hours, we're prompting for a reboot, and you have essentially 36 hours to complete that reboot before we are going to go ahead and just initiate the reboot to ensure that patches are being installed and machines are being protected. Now, keep in mind with some of these other options here, they are based off a user being logged in. And Microsoft does consider a locked machine to be a logged in user. So notifying a user and then rebooting or automatically rebooting, just keep in mind this would apply to a locked machine as well. So I generally recommend a minimally invasive option to prevent potential lost work. So probably either prompting or doing nothing would be the minimally invasive options on workstations. And then if no user is logged in, we can either do nothing, especially on servers. This is helpful because typically most people prefer to reboot their servers at set points in time, or we could reboot at a certain point of time, either daily, weekly, or on a regular interval. Now down here at the bottom is an option I didn't mention earlier, but it is essentially allowing you preemptive approvals or rejections of patches assigned to this policy. So if I wanted to specify a KB number and then either a pre-approval or pre-rejection, I absolutely have that flexibility. That would apply only to this policy, but you'll see the global overrides here at the top. You do have the ability to go to the global overrides and insert a KB, and this will apply across the board. So all devices that are on Ninja are not going to receive that patch. It's not going to be installed by Ninja by virtue of being blocked right here. And you can see we're doing this with some of the patches that get pushed out by Microsoft that are perhaps not ready for prime time. You can see the print nightmare fix from or the print nightmare issue from a few years ago, definitely something that you would want to globally reject. And then the fix down here, this ended up being something that was globally approved to ensure that all devices were getting that patch and having the print nightmare issue resolved. So now we've seen the policies, we've seen all the settings and information inside of policies. How does that impact our devices? How does that impact our day-to-day operation in terms of managing our patches? And so we come back to the dashboard now with a better understanding of how all this data gets put in place. We can see that we have pending patches, we have failed patches, but for my money, we want to go to the patching tab right here, go down to the OS selection, and then select the overview menu option. And this is our patching dashboard. So this is showing you the overall health from a patching perspective of all the devices that you manage. And you can limit this down to certain operating systems. I'm again going to stay focused on Windows right here. Device types, workstations versus servers, what type of patches. And then in this case, the devices, have they been online recently or have they been sitting in a drawer for a while and obviously haven't been patched? So for us, we're only going to care about patches online in the last 30 days. For patching compliance, we get a useful metric of how many devices have at least one outstanding patch. So 9 out of the 15 Windows patch-enabled devices in this environment are fully patched. There is no outstanding patch that they need to install. But that means that 6 devices have at least one or more patches that require installation. Now let's go to the middle tile right here, where we can see and start to address some of those devices that are missing patches. You'll see that we have our pending patches right here. So here's everything that is pending approval. You can see that we've got some cumulative updates, some feature updates. We do have the ability to click on the KB number right here, and we're going to be able to go to Microsoft's site and read up on the patch notes. We can see how many devices actually have this patch that's ready to be received. And then we also get some CVE and CVSS information so that we know exactly how severe the patch is in terms of its criticality. And so here we can see this one definitely is something that we should be pushing in 8.8 CVSS, over 60 different CVEs being addressed by this particular patch. So certainly something we'd want to approve. Now when I select that KB, I get 2 options, either to approve or reject. I can approve for my entire policy, or I can reject for my entire policy. I do have the option of going to the device level and approving or rejecting a patch for a specific machine if I want to have that option. And when I approve for my policies here, I get an option to determine which policies I want to approve on. Perhaps the channel's not ready for this, and so we can unselect them and we'll approve it only for our enterprise level devices. Now, if you mistakenly approve something or mistakenly reject something, it's very easy to undo. We can go into the OS patching tab again and look at our approved patches. Now, this is anything that's been manually approved by a human being or that has been automatically approved by the policy settings that we saw earlier. And I can undo this. When it's in an approved state, that essentially means it's awaiting installation. You'll remember that we have those two distinct schedules, the scan schedule and the update schedule. So you do have a grace period, depending on how you configure your schedules, where you've identified patches, but they have not yet been installed. And so therefore you can manage and control up to the point that we actually run that update schedule and approved patches actually get deployed to devices. And so anything right here, I still have the ability to go ahead and say, well, I don't want it anymore. I want to reject it. And if I want to reject it broadly, I would have the ability to go back to that global overrides menu we were at earlier and input that KB number to ensure that it's not being installed across the board. And similarly, if you reject something and say, actually, I need that, very easy to come back in here, find the particular patch, and then approve. And again, you can do these sort of approvals and rejections on a per device level if you go to the device. So let's go to this these 5 machines here. These 5 machines all have this patch rejected, and I've decided that this machine actually needs it. So we're going to go ahead and click into that device. We get these same patching menu options available to us where I can find that patch that's been rejected. And then from here, I can approve it for the specific device in question rather than for all devices that are on the shared policy. All right. So that's the basics of how patching operates within Ninja. Let's go ahead and shift gears to how we can use other tools on Ninja to improve our overall patching operation. And we will start by addressing the Windows 11 question. So I will go to administration on the left-hand side and then down to library and then into the automation section. Inside the automation section, this is where you can add in your own scripts. So anything in Batch, PowerShell, JavaScript, Shell script, or VB script that you've previously used, you can import. But you also get the option to pull from our template library. These are all scripts that are created by Ninja engineers, and they're designed to account for specific use cases. And one of the most common scripts or use cases that we get asked about is blocking Windows 11. You can see right here, this is probably the one that's been used more than any other script in the template library in my time here at Ninja. Now what this does, this script blocks Windows 11 at the registry level. On a Windows 10 machine, it sets the max version to be 22H2, which according to Microsoft at present is the last version of Windows 10. There's not going to be another version of Windows 10 beyond 22H2. So we set our max version to be 22H2, and if we run this across all of our devices that we don't want to upgrade to Windows 11, it will ensure that those machines are not going to be upgraded past that point. This is an important accommodation to make in your environment. We certainly have had people who've transitioned from other tools to Ninja and gone, hey, I realized after the fact that maybe we weren't patching as I thought we were before, because once we got into Ninja and we started actually running patch cycles, just started being installed. And if you were not prepared to block Windows 11 and prevent that upgrade, people ended up having Windows 11 upgraded, on their machines, and that was an unexpected instance of that. And this script allows you to control that. When is a device going to upgrade Windows 11? It should upgrade when you decide it should. And so what we can do is use the script to make sure that machines aren't getting upgraded to Windows 11. Microsoft has developed a bad habit in the past 6 months to a year where patches that seem completely unrelated to Windows 11 will have an unfortunate side effect of upgrading your machine to Windows 11. And this script right here, making this registry modification, has proven to be extremely effective at making sure that, I'll say inadvertent move by Microsoft to upgrade your machine to Windows 11 does not actually take place. So when we have this script, we can then go ahead and run it. I view this as a device configuration action. And so if we go back into policies, I will have this run as a scheduled automation across all my devices using the run once immediately scheduling option. The run once immediately option is great for device configuration actions because it is a scattershot approach. It's going to run on every online device. It's going to run on every offline device once it comes back online. And then any new devices to join this policy in the future will also have this script run on them. And so for my money, that's perfect for blocking Windows 11. Now I can run this as a automation on my workstations because Windows 11 is only a workstation concern. I don't need to worry about it on my servers. And so I'll say this is blocking Windows 11, and I am running this as an automation right there. Now, we have a dynamic script variable that allows us to determine the target version here. Like I said, 22H2 is the most recent version, and it's what I would recommend. I think some people are asking me to go into full screen. Seems like. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. I'm not sure how this is presenting over Zoom, so if there's a way to make it just full screen and remove my video, please feel free. So I can go ahead and run that script that'll run across all my devices that are on this policy, and it will ensure that my Windows 11 is blocked across those machines. Now I made a slight modification here to that one script, and I'll show you the modification that I made. If I go back into the library here, I go and I find my block Windows 11 script, and I scroll down to the part where we actually make the registry modifications right there, you can see this additional bit of code on line 99. And this is a bit of code that interacts with a custom field inside of Ninja. Custom fields are exactly what they sound like. They are customizable data fields, in this case, a checkbox. And all it's doing is indicating whether or not this action has been taken on this device, which means I can then very easily track within Ninja where I've made this modification and where I haven't. And so when I'm ready to undo that modification to allow a device to upgrade to Windows 11, which we will have to do at some point, this will ensure that that is easily trackable and not something that I then have to invent an entirely new process to try and find out what's going on. Now, to make that work, I would need to go to my devices menu here and go into a role custom field. And I would create a custom field that looks like this, a Windows 11 registry block checkbox. And I'm able to interact with this from an automation. You can see I can both read and write from it via the automation section. And I can then go into my roles, and I can assign that to just my workstation type devices. You can see that down there. Of course, I don't need to assign this custom field anywhere else because the Windows 11 upgrade is only a concern on my workstation, just accounted for that. Now, at this point, that script should have run. So I will go into my devices menu, and then I'm going to modify some of the columns that I have here. So I'm going to go to my table settings in the top right. And from here, I can add in columns. Oops, let me find out where they are. I can add in some columns to allow me to see where the change has been made. So right there, I can see the Windows 11 blocked via registry change has been made. And so if I go over to the right-hand side, I can see that yes, this has been blocked by the registry. In fact, if I load up my group of just workstations, we can see that this Windows 11 has been blocked by the registry on all of my Windows workstations. So it's very easy for me to say, well, hey, these devices here, I need to undo that block. And I can then go ahead and run the corresponding allow Windows 11 upgrade script that we also have available in the template library. Now let's switch gears for a second. This will block the on the registry level. So even through the end user's ability, assuming they have it, to upgrade their machine, they're still going to be blocked from upgrading their machine. But we also might want to track Windows 11 readiness. We want to know when or where our devices are even capable of this upgrade. We have plenty of time for this. It's not like we're coming down to the wire or anything. But the end of life date for Windows 10, I believe, is October 2025. So we have roughly a little over 18 months to sort of account for what devices are going to be able to be upgraded to Windows 11 and which ones aren't going to be able to be upgraded. And so what we can then do is use another script from the template library. So if I go back in there, I'm going to leverage the Windows 11 readiness script. And so this will check and confirm. This is actually a modification of the script from Microsoft directly, I believe. And this will actually return whether or not a machine is capable of being upgraded to Windows 11. And we can actually write that result into a custom field, so it is something that's very easily trackable within Ninja. And so if I close out there and go back to my online workstations device group that I see right here, over on the right-hand side, I have a Windows 11 upgrade column, and I can see where the machines that have run this script are not capable of upgrading to Windows 11. And so that allows me to create some reports where I can say, hey, the machine's not ready for Windows 11. These are machines that eventually, at some point, we are going to have to replace, so that in October of 2025, when Windows 10 is finally end of life, we have an option to make sure that we're maintaining device security and that machines are fully patched and receiving active security updates. Let's talk about the end user and how they figure into all of this. We will shift away from the Windows 11 topic, and we will instead focus on the end user. How much do you want them to know? How much do you not want them to know? This is something that varies. Some people want to make sure that end users are aware of when patching is occurring. If nothing else, then ensuring that devices are online and ready to receive patches at the expected time that patches are installed. Some people want this to be a completely invisible process and have the end user not be bothered or impacted in any way by patching. Essentially, if the end user doesn't notice, then everything is great. Now you have a multitude of options here. Again, we'll return to the template library to take advantage of the display pop-up script. Now, this is incredibly useful. There are a myriad of use cases for this. We can very easily prompt for reboots. So if you want to have a reboot prompt separate from what we saw inside of the patching policies earlier, this is a great way to kind of have out-of-band reboot prompts should you have a need for that. This could absolutely help facilitate third-party software application patching, ensuring that certain applications are closed. But for our money, we're just going to use this as a regular message box. We just want an alert to pop up on the screen of the end user to let them know that patching is going to be taking place. So we'll close out here and we'll go into our policies again and go down to our Windows Workstation policy here. You have a few options. You may want to run this as a pre-script automation. And so I can go ahead and say, I want to run this display pop-up right here. Now I'm going to run this as the current logged on user. Our default is system, but obviously if we run a display as system, that's not going to be visible by anybody. So we need to run as the current logged on user if we want a human being to actually see this. Now, in our case, I could leverage a restart reminder. I could add a customizable logo if I wanted. But again, we're keeping it simple, very simple message. Patching is taking place on this machine. Please leave your machine turned on and logged out before the end of the day. And so we can then apply that. And anytime we are going to run a patching cycle, that pop-up is going to be displayed. Now, this does depend on when your patching is taking place. If you're doing this in the middle of the night, nobody's going to see this prompt, so it's not going to be tremendously useful. But we're patching on a weekly cadence here. So let's go ahead and do a scheduled automation. And we'll run weekly. We're patching on Mondays and Fridays. So we're going to go ahead and keep this on Mondays and Fridays. And at a little after lunchtime, I'm going to go ahead and have this pop up on the machines, say the patching is taking place. And so now I've captured the end user at a point in time during the day when they're likely to actually see this message and be able to be proactive with it, as opposed to being sort of reactive in the moment using the Windows patching method here. But again, this all is determined by when you are actually patching. If you're patching in the middle of the day, this would be a great option. But if you're patching after hours, I would recommend doing a scheduled automation so that you can better control when that display is going to be visible to the end user. Now, beyond that, what else do we need to think about with the end user? Well, first of all, do they have the ability to patch or not? And so Ninja is not going to impact the end user's ability to patch in any way. If they have the rights to install patches on their machine, they're going to be able to check for updates, and they're going to be able to install those updates, and nothing that you do within Ninja natively is going to impact that. For example, we saw the ability to block patches right here. This does not impact the end user. They would still be able to download and install the print nightmare, assuming that patch was still available to them. So how can we prevent that? So what we'll do is go into the dojo here, and we're going to leverage our check for updates script that's inside here. Again, all the links and references that I have spoken about so far today, that is going to be compiled to a primer that will be available in the Ninja Dojo here in the NinjaOne Discord, which I would highly recommend everybody check out, and will also be available on our public website. So there'll be multitude of places to find not just this webinar recording, but all of the material that I'm referencing here. And so what we can do with this script is actually block the ability of the end user to check for updates whatsoever. It's not, again, not an action that you need to take, but if you want to have complete control over patching and what is being patched on your machines, then this is a very good step to take to ensure that you have that level of control and that you don't have multiple entities that are fighting for control of patching the machine. And of course, this would prevent somebody giving somebody the ability to do out-of-band patch updates, which could result in undesirable patches being installed. And so that can be another device configuration script that maybe I run once immediately across all my devices, along with the block of Windows 11. And the final device configuration script that you may want to run is actually to control the bandwidth that Windows patching is utilizing. So if we go back into the template library, a phrase I'm saying far too much now that I'm actually saying this out loud. We do have the ability to go ahead and set the bandwidth for how much a device can consume in regards to Windows updates and Microsoft Store updates. And so this is a great way, if you have locations that have limited bandwidth, this is a great way of ensuring that when patching cycles are occurring, that the entire network is not being crashed. Again, in those areas where there is perhaps bad bandwidth, unreliable bandwidth, or perhaps you don't want to have daytime operation impacted by crashing the VPN or something like that whenever you're trying to ensure that these patches are getting installed. All right. We will move on to our next topic here, which is maintenance, essentially. How do we maintain and stay on top of our patching to make sure the patches are getting installed as we would expect them to be? And we'll start by looking at the failed patch. What happens when we have failed patches? So let's go to the devices menu again. And so here, the devices menu allows us to search for devices that have common criteria. And so what we can do is find devices that have an OS patch in a failed state. Perfect. Right there, we can see that we have just one device with a patch in a failed state here. I can actually go ahead and save this as, if I could type, that would be great. Failed patches. I can save that. Now this is useful as a favorite. I can quickly load this up at the touch of a button. And this is a dynamic group. So anytime I refresh it or anytime I load it, it's showing me all the devices that meet these search parameters. So if a script fail or a patch fails tomorrow and I come in and load this group up, I'm going to see it in here. It's not going to be this one machine in perpetuity. Now this, again, useful for an informational perspective, but how can we get a notification that patches have failed? We can have this sent as a report. We can get a daily digest email every day, every week, or every month with any machines that have a failed patch. And so I'll go ahead and create a report here. We'll say this is a data table report called failed patches. Much better typing job that time. And I can go ahead and limit this down to my group of failed patches. I can even go ahead and customize the view here from a column perspective in terms of how many failed patches there are on these devices. And so if I go back here, search for my failed patches, I'm able to see them right there. I can go ahead and save this and have this sent out on a regular recurring basis to my ticketing system or just to my email. And so every day or every week, I have an easy notification of what failed patches there are. And so I can then go ahead and address them. Now, case in point, this sort of reporting workflow, I'm using it for failed patches, but we already saw how devices such as the Windows 11 readiness custom field or the Windows 11 block by registry custom field, those can also factor into reports as well. So if you're looking to send a report of devices that are not capable of the Windows 11 upgrade, that is as simple as coming into my devices menu, creating a custom field filter where the Windows 11 upgrade contains not capable. And so I can see these 4 machines are not capable of the Windows 11 upgrade. I can follow the same workflow to save this group and have this sent out as a report, either on a one-time or a regular basis. Let's change gears and go back into the policy. We will go into our policies and then into the workstation policy again. And we're going to go ahead and be notified or create conditions for 2 potential items. The first one is going to be whenever we have a CVSS score of 9.0 or greater. We saw the CVSS and CVE information earlier on the dashboard, but if you want to know immediately, as soon as a patch is available for a machine and that vulnerability is above a 9.0, we can go ahead and receive a notification for this, and this could also generate a ticket so that the help desk could immediately remediate. You do have an option of bringing time into the equation. Maybe you only want to know when the patch has been available for 7 days. Perhaps you want to find out if somebody may have accidentally rejected it. So this is a great way to stay on top of your patching environment, make sure that no mission critical patches are not being installed as quickly as possible. Another option would be the patch last installed. So we can find out when a patch has not been installed for more than 30 days in this context. Now, I would highly recommend checking the Ninja Update Engine only option here. And the reason for that being is that there are some applications on a Windows device that are going to self-update. On a workstation, I know Defender is going to self-update. And so that could, if this option was unchecked, that could pollute your results. Defender patches are being installed, but we care about the cumulative updates and the update rollups and the feature updates. We want to know about those. So by checking this option, you can take the self-updating out of the equation and ensure that we know when Ninja has not installed a patch in more than 30 days, and we can go and address that and find out why that's the case. This is configurable, by the way, from 1 to 120 days, so you do have some flexibility on how frequently you want to check for this. And finally, if I close out here, actually, we'll go back to the devices menu. What we can do is use our devices menu here to search for Windows 10 machines that are below 22H2. So what I'll first do, oops, there we go, is find just Windows 10 machines. I don't care about Windows 11 in this particular context, but we'll talk about more about that in a second. So we want to know when there's a Windows 10 machine and its build. You can see the release right here does not contain 22H2. Again, that's the last version of Windows 10. So if I have any machines that are not on 22H2 of Windows 10, I want to have a reason for that. Maybe they're lab machines that shouldn't be on a newer version. But in most cases, if you have any Windows 10 machines that are not on 22H2 right now, you really want to start taking a more proactive look at getting those machines upgraded to 22H2. And the reason is that I have seen a pretty consistent behavior from Microsoft throughout the years, where if you don't patch on a regular cadence and you get stuck on an older feature build of Windows, they don't actually, you get taken out of the ecosystem, so to speak. Microsoft turns off the spigot of the patches. And so if I was on 1909 of Windows 10 for a really long time, and all of a sudden I tried to go and check for updates to see if 22H2 is available, it's possible it's not going to be available because Microsoft, as I said, has turned off the spigot. You've been out of the ecosystem too long. And so this can help you identify where that's the case, where you can then go ahead and do a reinstall of the OS, get it up to that latest version so that you're going to be protected with the latest security updates. And so from here, I can see that actually all of these machines are not on 22H2. So I definitely have my work cut out for me. We'll move to questions here in just a second. I did want to talk about more device configuration actions as they relate to Ninja patching. We talked about how we can block Windows 11, about how we can ensure that all our proper changes are made. One thing that we didn't discuss today, I've spoken about it previously on other webinars, is essentially device onboarding and ensuring that the device is in the proper state to receive Windows patches. I have had the unfortunate circumstance where I've walked into a building where there was 25 Windows devices in there, and none of them were running genuine Windows, and none of them had the Windows Update service enabled. The service was actually disabled on all the devices, and that's not good. So, having a script that actually goes through and does some of the underlying work of confirming that the service is enabled, that all the necessary DLLs are up to date, is a very good idea. And I am going to post or what will be sent out via email in terms of resources, and what we'll post on the dojo and in Discord is actually some links to two separate scripts that should help do a little bit of table setting and ensure that your devices are ready to be patched. One is a Windows Update repair script, just sort of generic as you get new devices brought in that maybe aren't brand new, could be a bring your own device situation. You want to make sure that whatever somebody else has done is not going to impact your effectiveness. And so we can go ahead and run that script to ensure that devices are ready to receive updates. And then if you've been having, or if you've had devices that are in a WSUS environment, there may be some additional configuration, resetting of registry keys in order to ensure that that device is not constantly looking at WSUS for patches, that it's no longer receiving if it's moved out of that environment. And so that is also a great script. And I will be posting both of those as links in the primer that goes out with this webinar. I am going to reshare my screen. And we'll talk a little bit about what other people do within Ninja. Yeah, I see some chat in there about the Windows Upgrade Assistant. Highly recommend using that, leveraging the Windows Update Assistant to get devices up to the most recent version. That is absolutely what I do. And we do have a PowerShell script in the dojo that I'll also link that can help automate that process of upgrading to the latest build of Windows 10 via the Update Assistant. All right. So scan schedule, what are people doing in the field? This is the patching insights. We do have this in the dojo as well. Again, all the data in that will be available and linked in the email that gets sent out. We can see here that people are patching primarily on Fridays. Now, keep in mind the defaults for a brand new Ninja environment are set to daily at 5 o'clock. So that could be polluting or kind of biasing these results in some way, but still looks like most people are doing Fridays 40% of the time. Again, this is the scan schedule. So this is just identifying new patches. And it looks like most people are doing these after work hours. Again, we do have our default set to be 5 o'clock every single day. So that could be a little bit of a pollution in the data there. Here's our update schedule. This is when patches are actually being installed. We can see the results are a little bit different. They're a little bit more distributed. We're seeing most of this happen on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we are seeing this happen either in the very early morning or we're seeing it happen after 5 o'clock. So very different results here. And then if we look at how patches are being approved, we can see the defaults here. So this is the most widely used method of patch approvals, but again, it is our defaults. You can see that we're automatically rejecting optional patches. We're automatically approving important patches, and then we have both critical and important security updates rubber stamped, while we're going to be taking a closer look at moderate patches, and we're just rejecting the low security updates out of hand. If we look at what the next most common one, it is actually just auto-approving everything. And so you can see here, everything is set to approve. We're checking for everything. This is the second most common profile that we see in use through Ninja. I can say that for my recommendation, I probably would want feature updates to be on a manual setting so that I, again, have control over when those updates are getting pushed out. Feature updates do tend to be a bigger visual change to the end user. It's more noticeable in my experience than a regular update or a security update. So again, having control over when those feature updates are getting pushed out is generally, in my opinion, a good idea. And with that, I will invite Andrew to come out as we have a giveaway today.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew. I'm the marketing programs coordinator at Ninja, and today I'll be announcing the winner of today's webinar prize. This person will be able to choose between a PlayStation 5 console, a Meta Quest 3 headset, a Yeti cooler, a pair of Apple AirPod Maxes, and a Weber Spirit grill. So the winner of today's prize is Brian Faulkner. Everyone drop a huge congratulations in the chat. Brian, please keep an eye out in the following days for an email to claim your prize. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a few questions. Let me go ahead and pull up the Q&A here. I have to give a shout out to Jonathan Taylor, who has been doing the great work answering a lot of these questions in the chat. So thank you very much, Jonathan. We got a question from Sean here. Wants to talk about failed patches like 22H2 that doesn't want to install on devices. Sorry, it just disappeared, so now I didn't get a chance to read the entire question. Sorry, Sean, your question just disappeared. Here we have a question from Steven here. He has his patches on a schedule, and we continue to see devices state that they missed the patch window and the patch cycle had to be rescheduled. So yeah, that is a message that you are going to see when a device is offline at the time that patching is scheduled to occur. You're going to see an activity in Ninja, and that's going to say we weren't unable to patch because I think we had to reschedule the patch cycle. And so that's generally what that error message means. I believe it says OS patch warning, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's that message. The machine was offline at the time the patch cycle was supposed to run. If you don't want to be impacted by that, I would highly recommend leveraging the check or run immediately if missed option inside of policies. Both the scan schedule and the update schedule have an option to run the scan as soon as the device comes back online. And I would recommend taking that action. I've done some pretty heavy analysis of the numbers from some between the difference between using that and not using it. And it is going to be extremely difficult to crack a 50% patch installation effectiveness percentage if you are patching in the middle of the night and your device, and you're not leveraging that option, the run immediately if missed option. It is just incredibly difficult to ensure that those devices are going to be online at the scheduled time so that they can be installed properly. The display notification can help, but if you really want to ensure that you are having patches installed and your patching cycles are off hours when machines are likely to not always be online, I would highly, highly recommend leveraging the run immediately if missed option for both the scan schedule and the update schedule. Again, I would be remiss if I did not say, please think about how this is going to impact the end user. Obviously for servers, you might not want to have them run the scan immediately when they come back online. If the server is offline at the time the patching cycle is supposed to occur, you may have bigger issues that you want to investigate and not have to worry about patching. So yeah, definitely something to take into consideration there. But if you do see that message, it means the device was not online at the time that we tried to patch. We get a question from Daniel. What is a good way to select just a few machines per customer to pre-test patches? I would highly recommend using inherited policies. With the new auto approval feature, you could create a group of patch test machines and have them automatically approve the patches, and having the remainder of those patches automatically delegated in 2 weeks after that time. And so you can essentially have a bit of a time to pre-test those patches to ensure that they are not going to cause some issues. Question from Scott, where can we find the recording for this once the webinar is over? It will be emailed to you. It will be in the Ninja Dojo. It will be in the NinjaOne Discord, which again, I highly recommend everybody check out. And then we also will have this sent out via email and be available on the public website. So I think 4 different spots it's going to be for everyone to peruse. Question from John, is there a script to automate BitLocker? There is a multitude of PowerShell commandlets to automate the enablement of BitLocker and then the suspension of that if you would want to suspend BitLocker, for example, for driver updates. Although I believe for Windows updates from Microsoft, BitLocker should not be required to be suspended to have those installed. Yeah, tips for scheduling patching on intermittently connected devices like laptops. Again, I would say let's leverage the run immediately if missed option inside of policies. And that is going to ensure that when your devices come online, they're immediately going to start patching. Now, again, we want to think about the impact to the end user here. Patching is generally not resource intensive. It is silent to the end user in most cases. If they have an older machine, if they are low on resources, that could, the fans could kick on. They might notice their machine start to chug a little bit more. So yes, I would say for any machines that you're having difficulty getting patched at the scheduled time, the run immediately if missed option is the way to go. But again, just think about how that could potentially impact your end users. Most people probably fine, but potentially older hardware could be impacted just in terms of noticing a slowdown on the device. And then last question, I think, that we have time for today from Bruce. Best way to start patching devices that are potentially years out of date. Critical only, and then move to important, optional, and drivers. My first recommendation there, Bruce, is going to be to use the Windows Upgrade Assistant to get that machine up to the latest feature version. And once you get upgraded to that feature version, all the other necessary updates should start flowing through the normal process and the normal Windows ecosystem. And again, I will be posting a script, many scripts as sort of a primer or a companion piece for this webinar. And one of them is something that is essentially a reinstall of the OS. It doesn't delete any data or format the hard drive, but it installs the OS 22H2, which would be the latest version. We are unfortunately at time here, but I wanted to thank everybody for attending. A lot of great stuff in the chat here. I really am hoping maybe we can get the chat accessible as well for people who might want to review some great information. But thank you again for watching today. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out. jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. This was recorded, and we will post and email that to everybody. Thank you all for attending again, and please have a pleasant day. Take care.